Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer and I have two brand new guests today, and we're going to talk about what happened yesterday in Sacramento about this bill on caste discrimination SB 403. It entered the Judiciary Committee of the Assembly of California, and what transpired and how things are going to play out. We are going to talk about it. I have two guests today, Sudha Jagannathan and Pushpita Prasad. And before I introduce them in detail, let's first welcome our guests today. Sudha ji, Pushpita ji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskaram.
Namaskaram.
Let me just give our viewers a brief update or brief background on Sudha ji and Pushpita ji. Sudha ji is a proud and practicing Bahujan Hindu. Sudha has worked at some of America's largest technology company over a career spanning decades. She is on the board of Coalition of Hindus of North America, CONA, where she has been spearheading the pushback against campaign to impose caste on California. She has been featured in numerous media platforms, including NPR, Associated Press, and Religion News. And Pushpita Prasad is a storyteller and communications professional with a background in working with media, technology, content, and history. She researches and educates about topics related to India, Hinduism, its festivals and traditions, decolonization, media representation, and human rights, and has been published in numerous publications. In fact, I think, Pushpita ji, you published on PGurus also. I remember doing something like that. Wonderful. And Pushpita ji is also on the board of CONA and believes in the power of grassroots advocacy, activism, and dialogue to drive change and understanding. So let me start with Sudha ji. Sudha ji, this must be really heartbreaking. You have put in so much effort in reaching out to various parts of the Indian American community. You've been working tirelessly from the front lines, and when we see a one-sided vote like this, first off, perhaps you can just walk how many people voted, how many abstained, and then we can start our conversation after that. Over to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a Assembly Judiciary Committee with 11 members. So 2 Republicans abstained. There are actually 3 Republicans on the committee. So 1 Republican voted yes, and the 9 Democrats voted yes. So in the Senate in April, we also saw all of the Democrats voting yes. There was 1 brave Republican who voted no. And of course, 1 Democrat, I want to call him out, Senator Josh Becker also abstained, along with 4 Republicans. This was in April. So we kind of saw the same pattern, right? It's very partisan. The bill itself, if you go to the website, says a partisan bill. SB 403 says banning caste discrimination, right? That's what the bill says. So that is a bill that was introduced in March at the very last moment with amendments. And then it came through the Judiciary Committee in the Senate with the full Senate, the Democrats voting for it, and a few of the Republicans voting for it, and with some abstaining members and 1 voting no, Senator Brian Jones. Then let's fast forward a few months, during which time the community came together and got our narrative right and got our strategies right, went back and communicated very strongly that what was wrong with the bill. And then yesterday, a bill with a lot of amendments got passed. Again, very partisan in the sense of, the Democrats all voted yes, including the only Hindu American who said he after 172 years, he was the only one representing the faith, and he voted yes, and 1 Republican voted yes, but 2 Republicans, the Vice Chair 𝙒𝙖𝙩𝙦 and Assemblywoman Diane Dixon abstained. So it was a letdown, but I have to say, the fight, the community has taken up the fight. It's a very community-driven program, and CONA obviously is a grassroots advocacy, so we do a lot, but the entire community up and down California have come together. There were people who drove in buses from Southern California, right, from San Diego, got to Sacramento to have their voices heard, from the Bay Area, from Yuba City, Central Valley. We also built coalitions, right? When you look at who was supporting, it was very scary to see how many of the Sikh community supported the bill. But they were Sikh community members, leaders from Yuba City and Sutter County, etc., who opposed and decided to stand with us. They also joined us in many of the conversations we had with the judiciary members. So we are very proud of having a good broad-based support. You know, our stories, when we start to take it out to the NAACP in Bakersfield, they came on board. The California Business Association came on board and said this bill is going to be a big mess for the state. So the more we are communicating and expanding our coalitions, our story and our relevance is happening. So this is a long game, and we are prepared to fight it. And I would say the entire community, Indian Americans, should be proud of what we did so far. The bill that passed was not what it started off in March, with significant changes where they removed entire sections that really maligned us. So it's good from that point of view. I want to just call out the AAPI caucus leaders, Assemblyman Evan Lowe and Alex Lee, worked with the community, decided to listen to the community. They proposed a couple of options. The first option was pause, let's do a study. Is this necessary? Nobody wanted that, right? That was a good move, but the committee did not go for it. But the second portion was the language that the Hindu organizations provided to the committee and said, let's expand the use of ancestry and don't use the word caste. But they tucked in the word caste in the expanded version. So it's actually plus and minus for the other side and for us. It's a partial win for us, partial win for them, right? So we are even more determined to continue our fight and make sure at some point the word caste is removed altogether.
Thank you so much, Sudha ji, for that opening statement. And Pushpita ji, I have already said that when the Senate Judiciary voted unanimously, more or less, right? I mean, abstain doesn't count. So I had said that the Democrats in this case are the judge, jury, and the executioners. And for some reason, the diktat seems to have come from somewhere, and they are all voting in one direction. I also looked at the numbers. You know, the Democrats control 75% of the Senate, 75% of the Assembly. And even if the governor says, no, I shall not sign the bill, they can even override him. So one question that kind of keeps bugging me, Pushpita ji, what is the argument they are giving for having voted this way? Can you kind of unpack that part for us? Because on the face of it, there is already an ancestry law in place. Why then this new rule? Why are they so obsessed with it? How is it that the entire community of Democrats are saying that this is a much needed thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's $1 million question. I think the issue, as you know well, by the time these public announcements start and these public hearings start, a lot of the ball game and the decisions have already been made. And I think, if anything, we need to learn from this as a community, because I think for the last 30, 40 years that the community has been here, they have not been playing the game. And there is a very clear structure in the way information flows in the United States, in the way policies are made, in the way power is, handed down. And for some reason, the Indian American community and the Hindus have not been willing to sort of step up and play that game. We sort of sit and remain very focused on our own personal lives, our work, etc. And, the squeaky wheel gets the attention. That is the way the system is set up. And so what you have been seeing in the last year is something that we at CONA have been calling attention to since we started. We're like, guys, there is a tsunami coming at us. Please speak up and start getting counted. But everyone sort of was brushing it under the rug, not believing that things could get so stacked. And I think SB 403 has been a revelation for many, many well-meaning people in our community who have been completely shocked to see how ridiculous the whole campaign has been. you mentioned existing, you mentioned your research showing existing laws. We don't even need to go that far, right? Senator Wahab says so herself in one of the many versions of the bill. I don't know if it survived. I've kind of lost track of so many versions. But she herself said in a recent version of the bill that, existing law covered caste discrimination. And so she was basically, seeking to clarify something or something. So I think that's where we have to start seeing that when this is not really, first, we all agree that there isn't really proof that a systemic problem exists that this law is trying to solve. Secondly, existing laws cover the problem. So why this fixation on introducing the word caste? And for there, you have to look at what we have been saying very consistently is what lies behind this word caste. Caste is not a neutral word. You could fix the exact kind of discrimination that you're wishing to tackle by using more broad, more neutral words. Because if you're saying that caste is sort of this birth-based family discrimination, then why use that word caste? Because it happens, you can find similar examples of discrimination in other parts of the world that are absolutely not associated with caste. So this desire to fixate on the word caste leads us to believe that the target, and that's why we've been very consistent in saying the target is not discrimination, the target is the Hindu American. And this comes repeatedly over and over again, right? People challenge us and try to label us in many different ways, but we always say we are not the ones defining caste here. You can look up what any dictionary defines caste as. I looked up Oxford and Merriam-Webster. You can look up whichever one you prefer. I looked at Google search. All of them, unfortunately, define caste as a Hindu system of hierarchy. Every 7th grader in California for the past 4 decades has been taught that caste is introduced to the concept of caste only when they are taught lessons on Hinduism, not when they are taught lessons on Sikhism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, etc. Right? So this sudden kind of a turnaround to say that, well, we say caste, but we don't really mean Indians or Hindus. That's just not going to fly. So I think there is a larger play at work here, and I think that is why the Indian American and the Hindu community really needs to wake up and realize that they have to speak up and fight for their existence and for their right to be here as full standing citizens. We should not be ready to accept a somewhat lower position in society or a somewhat different treatment by the law simply because of our faith. That is unacceptable.
I would like to add something, Shriji.
Yeah,
so what happened was that yesterday, Assemblywoman Ash Kalra asked a question of Senator Wahab and said, why not using inherited status in the amended bill? Why are we insisting on caste? And Senator Wahab said, because we are fighting caste discrimination, right? And the word caste has special meaning, just like race, gender, age have. But everybody has race, everybody has gender, everybody has age. Not everybody has caste. So that was not probed further. That was, a missed opportunity. But I don't know if the assembly members would have really probed that far.
I have already, maybe call me a little bit, already predetermined in my judgment. In my opinion, having spoken to many Democrats offline, and there are many moderate Democrats who are not comfortable with this decision. I can tell our viewers, look, this is one group that has taken control of this, and this group, that the party is so firmly in the group of that group that now they are trying to take them out. But unfortunately, many are afraid that if they dare to stand out, that they may not be able to get elected again. So at the end of the day, all politicians look for, I need to get back into this seat. And that is unfortunately the real truth here. And I would not even be surprised if this was a lobbed question, Let's just ask. I mean, Ami Bera is going to be under extra focus. Anyway, so the longer problem, or the bigger problem here is, Sudhaji, you spent countless hours reaching out to, I don't know how many different communities you went to, met them. Like, for example, many of the people, I came to know only that there are some groups like the Ravidasiyas and other types of groups who I didn't even know existed. for me, having come to Silicon Valley, I mean, I studied elsewhere in US, but when I came here, everybody was in one startup or the other, even an established company. People were running very, very hard. Everybody was focusing on their careers more than anything else. Nobody sat down to ask, what is your background? What is your background? At least at work, nobody did. I don't know what happens outside of that. So, Sudha-ji, how hard was it to open doors, open the minds of many people who had some preconceived notions? And I'm going to come to a specific one, Pushpita-ji, after this. So please go ahead, Sudha-ji.
Well, I would say in the last 3 months, the Kona team has had maybe 100 meetings with the staffers of the Senate and Assembly members, with some of the senators, with some of the Assembly members themselves. We had it just as Kona. We brought in young students. We brought in business members so they could articulate how this impacts them. And when the students spoke, the Assembly and the senators were they were affected, they were impacted. Having conducted meetings with as many Senate and Assembly members that we could gain access to, right? Most of the time it was staffers. And then many times we did talk to the senators and the Assembly members themselves. And we always included a student, a college student or a high school student, a girl or a boy, and they were very articulate. We had business members, that was just educating the Assembly and the legislature. I have to tell you, none of them understand this. Okay, the topic of caste, they do not understand. But every time we would have a meeting, we say, what comes to your head when we say the word caste? India, Hindu. That's what they say, because that's what they have learned. And the exception was maybe a Hispanic staffer who said, I have seen this in Mexico. Then we asked other questions. Have you seen that behavior in America? No, I have not. Okay, so they have a lot of preconceived ideas, but every time the question when we ask what is caste, they say it has to do with Hindu and India. So there is a bias. So we conducted these meetings to educate the population, right? And then we also then we're part of this larger community that was getting, becoming bigger and bigger in numbers as people heard of things. Our community has really done a terrific job. They would show up in temples, they would show up in Hindu events, hand out flyers, talk to them. And I have to say, Bay Area particularly, big majority of the Hindu population is unaware of what this is. So then we conducted Kona webinars, I would say. For the last 2 months, every Sunday we conducted webinars. We brought in people who wanted to speak out, and that's where we brought in some of our expanded coalition with our Sikh brothers, and they wanted to speak, right? They had showed up in Sacramento in April. That's when we really went and built some connections. So we brought them into the conversations. They talked about the challenges a community really is having, because just like the Hindu young students or the young people, their young people have been co-opted and sort of brainwashed, I want to say, by the narrative of social justice. And as parents, as leaders in the community, they are also struggling. So they find that they want to have a bigger voice in this conversation with the Assembly members more recently. So we also went out and secured 10 meetings on one Monday morning with Hindu giant Sikhs. They all showed up. People took day off from work, drove from Bay Area, drove from Central Valley, met up and went from meeting to meeting to meeting. They ran into Assemblyman Bill SB and got 10 minutes with him. Saw Assemblywoman Jasmeet Bains in the corridor, had a friendly chat. I'm just saying, showing up and not Zoom, in person, made an impact. But like Pushpita said, the narrative has been set for a long time. It's going to take us a while to change it. And our challenge is really to ensure the Hindu community really steps forward, right? And our community is different. People are, some are residents, some are citizens, some are on special visas. So many are international students. So we cannot ask all of them to speak out, but they can do things in the background to make sure they don't become victims of this particular campaign of caste on a college campus or at work or in many other places. So with training, right? Training happening on caste consciousness. So who's providing the training? The Hindus on campus are a great video. So we just want people to learn, and we are, as grassroots advocacy, part of our job is to educate, and we have been on a marathon run of educating not only our lawmakers but also the larger community. I want to tell you that last year we spoke to somebody who in the assembly where this topic had come. And when we talked to him, he said, "Oh my goodness, I did not understand the impact of it. And so this bill is not going to happen in 2022. Well, I wasn't clued into how these things work. I didn't know it could come back in 2023 and into the Senate. So even if, let's say, the bill gets killed, it can come back again and again. So we cannot be, we have to be very vigilant. I think that's the point."
Thank you so much,
I just,
Sudha. Go ahead.
I just want to add there that, the bill has come a long way, but at the end of the day, it is still a problematic bill. So I just want to make sure that while we are celebrating the progress, it's not a total win, and the fight is not over by any means. In fact, I would say, I always like to use the analogy of a marathon, right? So our community has sort of not really been participating in the last several decades. And now we suddenly have a marathon to run ahead of us. So, we might lose the first 5K or the first two 10Ks that we run. But unless we buckle up and keep training, we'll never win the marathon. But if we buckle up and train, we might lose the first couple of times. But in the long run, you can turn this thing around. And I think that is what 𝙒𝙗𝑚's focus is, that this bill is super problematic, and we will continue to fight it, because the inclusion of the word caste, and I think I just talked about the fact that the word caste is not a neutral word, right? We are not in favor of discrimination. We would like all discrimination to be tackled. So the word caste is actually the problem there. And so far, Senator Wahab has rejected attempts from many, many people, many organizations. We have supplied data in words, others have. And many, as Sudha said, several colleagues in the California Legislative Assembly have asked for more study, have suggested alternative language. But this fixation on this word caste is something that the Hindu community has to continue to fight. And honestly, appeal to all your viewers is that this is hard work. It's boring and sustained and expensive work. So we need everybody to step up, stay engaged. I've seen the community sort of seesaw because, when this high profile thing goes away, our interest in it also goes away. I saw this 2 years ago when dismantling global Hindutva happened, right? And all through August 2021, the community was up in arms and outrage and could not believe what was happening, at these very dear universities that we all target and want our kids to go to. And I was a little worried then, because everyone was like, oh, this time it's going to be different. But I was like, okay, let's hope you guys are all engaged in November. And unfortunately, most people, a small segment became energized, but a lot of people sort of went back. We cannot afford to go back. Every time we go back into our slumber, the other side gets more energized and comes back with something worse. So, SB 403 is not the end of it. There'll be more after this. There'll be in other states. There'll be more stuff coming along. So I think the time for complacency, if it ever was there, just needs to be gone. And there is a really, really burning need for our community to stop reinventing the wheel, to come together and stay focused on this. And obviously, since Sudha and I are with 𝙒𝙗𝑚, we think that's one of the strong channels to stay focused. And but there are other great organizations too.
I'm a great admirer of 𝙒𝙗𝑚 and HFA and every organization that is fighting for the cause of Sanatana Dharma. I'm going to ask one question to both of you, and then first I'll go with Sudha ji, and then afterwards, Pushpita ji, you can answer. Sudha ji, this whole bill, in fact, the other case in Cisco, everything is based on Equality Lab's narrative, which has been found to be not accepted in the only case where this was presented as the proof. And that case has fallen apart. Now, new evidence, in fact, new evidence for some, but I have had this thing for 6-7 months now, has shown that the Equality Lab's funding is from dubious sources. In fact, some of them could be also of a nature where it could threaten the national security of the United States. You have been seeing how much she has been identified with the Khalistani effort and Gurpatwan Singh Pannu himself. And yet, I mean, I'm sure if we know it, the politicians have an extra radar or two for these kinds of things. Who's good donor and not so good donor, who to keep away. And yet we see two people, Amar Shergill on the Democrat side, Harmeet Dillon on the Republican side. Both of them appear to be holding up this flag. And how much do you think these people who are voting, the assemblymen and as well as the senators, and I'm hoping that at least their office staff looks at this particular video and understand, look, when you are taking such an extreme stand, it could impact the security of the United States. Was this ever discussed in any of your discussion? Sudha ji, you first.
Yeah. So, we have to be very careful when we talk about certain things. And one example is that, well, before I go there, let me say, Equality Labs claims to stand for the Dalit, Bahujan, and a whole lot of other people except Hindus. And I want to say, she doesn't speak for me. 𝙒𝙗𝙖𝙩𝙀𝙀 Soundararajan doesn't speak for me, doesn't speak for my brothers and sisters who are part of Apna DB or the Hindu American Foundation or the Coalition of Hindus. She doesn't speak for any of us, right? Because her whole platforms doesn't even address Hindus. So that being said, what her background, I think you play a great role in that, right? In telling the story of who she is, what is her association with the organizations that should be of concern to the United States, and does the California state government have an agency who would want to look into these things, right? So when we talk to an assembly person and or the senator or their staffers, they don't want to hear anything about terrorism and all that. They think that we are paranoid. So we don't want to have that impression left, because we have a story to tell, and our story is about how the bill impacts us. So we do talk about the fact that Equality Lab's entire set of information, the report, the survey, and the testimonies of 30 women that had no context to their allegations of abuse, were all thrown out by the Honorable Judge Takaichi in the Santa Clara Superior Court 2 years ago, like in February 2021. So we bring it up. A lot of times they don't know that. And we say, why would data thrown out by the California courts be entertained by the California legislature? And what I have understood is that they keep things separate. What happened in the courts happened there. And this came out yesterday with Assemblyman Kalra saying, I think the bill is good based on whatnot. There are some issues, but at the end of the day, the courts should decide. And as a citizen, I want to say, I feel a little bit concerned when a lawmaker who is supported by taxpayers say that I'm going to punt this to the other side. Doesn't make me feel confident in the way things work in this democracy, but maybe that is what democracy is. But Equality Lab's data has been repeated in the legislative analysis by the very smart legal person on the Assemblyman Mindshine's committee. He has written a good analysis, but he also refers to Equality Labs says this, Equality Labs data does this. And then we went back and asked, why are you repeating this? Well, because that is what we have been given. We don't care about what the courts have thrown out. You can go back to the courts. I mean, in a sense, I'm not paraphrasing what they said, but in a sense, it's that. It's okay. And we'll be asked about, what about data? Where is the data? Where are the police reports? Where are the campus police reports? Where are the HR complaints? Well, to make law, we don't need proof. And I have to tell you, going through this process, learning about how American politics works, maybe all democracies work like this, it's a little bit disturbing. We have to reset our heads and think about it from a lawmaker's way of thinking. And I think we have to get there through training. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Pushpita ji, let me rephrase the question again for you, or refresh the question for you again. So the question is that this bill has been based on one survey, which has been found to be flawed and thrown out in the court 2 years ago. When this was brought to the attention of the lawmakers, how was your experience? And the fact that now more and more evidence, I mean, PGurus has been showing this for a long time now, that this actually impacts the national security of United States. What did they have to say about that?
Yeah, they just have no answer. They just, they literally avoid the answer. And it's not just lawmakers. We have brought it to every lawmaker. We have, sometimes forcibly, we're like, you watch that 2 minutes. Oh, we'll watch it later. We're like, no. Let us take 2 minutes of our time with you to show you this video, because we want to show you the pure hate that drips from her mouth about Hindu, the most benign practices that you as a lawmaker have certainly taken part of. You've certainly done namaste. You've probably gone to a Diwali celebration, holy celebration. You've gone to mandirs. You've probably quoted the Bhagavad Gita at some time. They just, it's part of the political. And by the way, the same thing with the media. I work a lot with so many media people, and I have, short of burning my relationship with them, I've asked them, I said, why will you not mention this? And again, they will just hem and haw and not answer that. But I think it goes back to the prevailing narrative. And so that you was talking about looking at it from a professional, nobody, it's very, very hard, or it takes a lot for a media person or a politician to go against the prevailing narrative. And Equality Labs has spent the last 15 years getting on the side of the narrative and framing it in ways that Americans can relate to. You have done a lot of excellent work exposing the work. But I always ask them, flying point, why are, and my two-step, when I show that video, I'm like, look, these guys want to dismantle Hinduism. And I, as a big believer in the First Amendment, even say that's fine. That's their right to want to dismantle Hinduism. What's not right is for state-funded bodies like a university, a city, or a state to sign on to somebody's personal vendetta of hate. And that is where they just kind of hem and haw and whatever. Some people give you weaselly answers like, but like, because Equality Labs keeps sanitizing its footprint, right? Oh, well, can you send me a link to the original? No, they've deleted it, but I can send you the web archived article. Oh, but we need to like research that, as though that's something very fishy. Everyone knows how a web archive engine works. Or you can go back and find this stuff themselves. They're smarter than us in many cases. So there is just a desire to go. We are sort of in this era of identity politics. And Hindus have not been playing the identity politics game at all. We've just been putting our heads down and thinking and working and thinking that was good enough. And, that's just not good enough. You've got to engage. So that you talked about, we met so many politicians. When we first started Kona a few years ago, I remember meeting some politicians, not as a caste issue. And they were like, wow, you're one of the first Hindu advocacy groups we've met. I was shocked to hear that. I was like, really? They said, yeah, we talk to a lot of Hindus and other, they'll come talk about, city clearance issues or job issues or whatever, right? As their normal secular day-to-day life. But very rarely do we advocate for ourselves as a community. So I think that is what is coming back to bite us in a major way, because when politicians or media take these actions, they know there is no blowback. There is no consequence. And at the end of the day, I have to, life is generally very transactional. People they know that, the progressives, there is a certain political moving that is very adjacent, that is, on the rise. And to go against it leads to actual consequences. To go with it leads to actual rewards. And the Hindus don't really put their money where their mouth is, put their vote where their mouth is. So many politicians have said, yeah, I can't stick my neck out for you guys. You guys don't even show up to vote. So, a lot of this, a lot of this angst and this chatter that happens in our drawing rooms and on WhatsApp groups, it's a fine, but you need to go the next step and take action where it matters, right? Go vote, go contribute, file complaints. We struggle as an advocacy organization to do that. People will spend hours talking on WhatsApp, but they will not take 5 minutes to go fill out the actual form where you can file a complaint, whether it's your school board, whether it's your office, whether it's your workplace. So that is why I think that's why I keep saying we need to train for the marathon.
Yes, indeed. And I have personal experience of what you just said. if it was not for a career change that I did, I would have not been involved with all these things. As long as I was with startups, there was no time for anything else. There was so much happening, and it's just that is the state that many of us find ourselves in. I'm not blaming any of you guys, but one simple change you can contemplate, and I would like you to contemplate it as soon as possible. For some reason, when we all became citizens, it was like the next step was to sign up as a Democrat. And perhaps you should think about, why should I, commit myself to one party? Why not stay independent? And then try and look at what each party has to give me and vote it based on that kind of a well-informed vote. Don't have to align yourself one way or the other. And also, get involved in, school councils, or any other groups that get formed in school, because that's where the opinion is being shaped. I remember the Board of Education in California going through all the syllabus changes, and the only thing that 6th graders and 5th graders were taught about Hinduism was that of Kali drinking blood and of Nataraja dancing over a baby. It's not a baby, it's a Rakshasa. Its name is Muyalakan, and that goes from a story. But the thing is, that's all past. Nobody is, answering all these questions. Sanatana Dharma is very deep, and nobody tried to explain all those things. Or, for example, why there are so many gods. Anyway, I'll keep this short. The next step is, I guess, it's going to go to the assembly for a full vote. And having seen 3 go in one direction, I don't think that's going to be any different. People they've got their blinkers on. They've got their whip, I'm told. There's been a whip issued. This I came to know a long time ago. The whip is, thou shalt vote this way. What beats me is why the Republicans are abstaining from this. I mean, you guys are so down in the hole right now as far as California politics is concerned. Come on now, guys. Put up a fight. And at least that way we'll know that there is a Republican politician in California. That's how bad things are. Thank you so much.
We have asked the question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We have asked the question of Republicans, and what they have told us is, of course, Senator Brian Jones was the only no voice. And he's been public. He's on Twitter. He's talking about SB 403. But the others have said, based on how partisan the legislature is, abstaining is a soft no. So, they have their own pressures. They're acting in ways that kind of keeps their constituents at the fine balance they have to walk in California, right? And I think that's what. But we are trying to follow up. We are trying to build on it. Like I know one Republican assemblywoman voted yes on this. We'd like to follow up with her very nicely. We are very professional. We just want to know why the assembly member did that. And we then talk about issues and we hear about it. Last time when we followed up with a senator who voted for it, a Republican senator, is when we found out the Caste Equity Task Force has 12 lawyers or something. They wrote a letter at the last minute to Senator Umberg, and that had an influence on how they voted. So a lot of things are happening in the background that we are not privy to, but we try.
So
I will also just say one thing, that in California, we are definitely seeing a lot of, but back to the issue of getting involved in politics, both parties are big tents. If we look at it across the thing, unfortunately, Hindu hate is found in both parties, maybe right now less so in one and then the other. But there is a bigger political, ideological battle going on. And we saw that even in the case of Seattle, right? Where Shama Sawant openly said that her desire in pushing all this caste legislation was also to what did she say, to overthrow capitalism and all these things, right? So there's some larger battles happening. Sometimes we are collateral damage in it, and we are collateral damage because there is no impact to attacking us. I go back to, if you are a soft target, then you will be targeted. At the end of the day, it's as simple as that, right? So if there is no consequence to coming after us, it's almost like, why would somebody not come after us, right? A politician, a media person, they always have to balance competing people's demands, right? If one side is going to be quiet and just keep WhatsApping, and the other side is actually going to take action that hurts me, I as a human being would be a fool not to go for the soft party, right? So I just, and when we say get active, we are not advocating anything violent. We're just saying, guys, vote. Look at who you're contributing to. Get involved in your, like you said, school boards. Everything. That is as American as apple pie. So when you became a citizen, it wasn't just a citizenship certificate. This is a country where grassroots really matters. And unfortunately, most of us only find out about the grassroots when we respond to something from the other side. But how many of us, even after this 3 years of outrage, have taken the time to go attend a city council meeting, find out who our city councilors are, who our state senators are, who are the people who are representing us? No solution for the hard work of getting in there and getting engaged and staying engaged.
Very true. And thank you so much, Sudha ji and Pushpita ji, for sharing your thoughts on this platform. And this is just getting started. I mean, there'll be more bills like this, because unless you put up a strong opposition, concerted effort, educate, the lawmakers, and also run in politics yourselves, there's no reason why. I mean, I can see Sudha ji and Pushpita ji as future leaders. And again, my humble request to you too, you'll stand a much better chance of winning if you stand as an independent. They'll say, so what will independent do? I said, yes, in one 2-year cycle may not be, but as more and more come, we will be the deciders and we will be the conscience keepers of the state. Let's get to that goal. And I'm hoping that you will take this very seriously and plunge into it. I will do whatever I can to further your cause, because this is important. It's very important that we understand what kind of society we live in, and jealousy is something that happens. Some people realize that they can't go ahead, so they try to pull the others down. I mean, Kshama Sawant, she's supposed to have grown up in Pune, and I don't understand. Same thing with Pramila Jayapal also. Where do they get all these extreme ideas? And the more important thing is, they have no room for the other side. Aren't you representing your constituency? In that case, you have to be inclusive. I don't see that coming. Even Pramila Jayapal, right? She writes a letter, 70 people sign, Democrats sign, to try and embarrass Modi. Guess what? She got embarrassed, in my opinion, because she had to usher Prime Minister Modi into the Congress, the hall where he gave the speech. She was one of the ushers. So what exactly?
I just want to say, Shriji, we should not, I mean, it doesn't matter if Pushpita or I run. I am very hopeful looking at the second, third generation. We have second, third generation, very articulate, practicing Hindus. I applaud their parents for having raised them as proud Hindu in California. We should encourage them to run for offices. In IT, they're running companies, they're doing this and that. It's all fine, but we'd also have to encourage them to run for office and be the voice of, like you said, reason, right? Because that is what Sanatana Dharma is. We are always in the center. Not left or right, we're in the center. We should bring that ideology, that talk into an American life by accepting everybody, right? And so my hope is all on the second, third generation right now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Namaskara. Thank you.
Thank you.